Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the Dojo Live recap show. That means it's Monday, and today is Monday, October 25th, 2021. Today I'm joined by Kim Lantis in Cancun, Mexico at our team
Ganaroo!
building event in Cancun, and Carlos in Cuernavaca, Mexico, and I'm in Southern California. It's raining here in Southern California.
Hey Kim, do you realize that Tulio he's in a state and we're not? I mean, he's in
Yeah,
California, but we're not in a state. We're just in a
I'm
random
in
country
Mexico.
somewhere like
Random
Mexico.
country, that's right,
Yeah, a
exactly.
Say it,
random
Carlos, say
country.
it.
Right.
Quintana
But
Roo. Quintana
but
Roo.
Quintana
but
Roo and Morelos,
Kim is in
please.
Quintana Roo, Quintana Roo. So anyway, today we're recapping last week's live shows. We had three of them. We spoke with Shira Shamban, who's the CEO and co-founder at Solvo, about turning software developers into security superheroes. And then we spoke with Julia Slanina, who's the CEO and founder at Treehouse Medical, about Femtech and maternal health. And finally, the growing consumerization of healthcare with Michael Wood, who's the Chief Strategy Officer at Insightin Health. Those are the three conversations we had last week, all very riveting conversations, a lot of things that we learned, and just curious to see what of these three chats stood out for you guys the most and why.
Well, I think at least as far as Shira and Julia's shows go, for me, a really great adjective is grit. Their personal stories, I think, are fantastic. Shira is just, her whole life story is amazing. The way that Solvo first started getting off the ground at the very beginning of the pandemic and how they pushed through it, I just think is awesome. And then just the backstory behind Treehouse itself, with Julia's personal story as well, that's it. I mean, it's grit, what it takes to be successful in business. It's very rarely, I think, this overnight, luck story. And I think on the personal level, and the fact that they're women in tech, come on, was just really exciting for me. But the services that their products offer as well, I think is great. I mean, with Solvo, really making the life of development, particularly the security side, a lot easier, and using AI to accomplish that. And then Treehouse Medical helping those companies primarily who tend to women's health, and particularly those that might be less mainstream, something like lactation consultants or doulas, and giving them a place where they can start developing a community, find clientele, and then eventually the future of the community of users that's going to be built up around that as well, which isn't just limited to women, men, and daddies out there. It's going to be a great community for anyone and everyone who's interested in needing a support group when anything that's related to women's health.
What I liked about last week was especially the fact that two of the guests were women, and I think we definitely need to see more of that in on our shows and in tech in general. But of course, it's always very satisfying and to find out that there's actually women. We need more, right? So, but when you see someone who's taking on tech challenges and getting into the tech space, even if they don't have a tech background, they might have some other background in a different area, but want to get in tech, and they go ahead and do it. And it's just amazing.
I read this interesting article just yesterday, how the shift, women actually dominated, or it was almost, I think, a 50-50 split in computer science up until the mid 70s and early 80s, when the personal computer hit the market. And guess what? It was marketed toward men and boys, and you'd see it in the toy section and all of this, and slowly women and girls got filtered out. And so now we're kind of coming back on the other side of the pendulum, thank God. But isn't that crazy? Just how
that is crazy. You know what I love about two of our guests? There's always the argument, if you want to make improvements to society, go the government route. But here's an example of two women that came from the public sector, from the government sector, who went the private sector route. Shira was a intelligence officer in the Israeli intelligence agency, and Julia was a public servant in Canada, right? So, it's a great example of, like, if you want to really make an impact in the world, maybe you ought to consider the private sector, because business through technology, you actually make everything more accessible. That's the beautiful thing about technology. You want to make it accessible, democratize it, give it to the people. Technology is the way, right? And the beautiful thing is what you were just commenting on. Yeah, the personal computer, unfortunately, was marketed toward the wrong demographic, right? A limited demographic. But ultimately,
not wrong, limited.
It's what makes it possible for us to do all these things today, because everybody's got access.
Talking about access, that's exactly what Insightin Health focuses on as well, correct?
That's right. We don't want to forget about Michael. Michael Wood was a great conversation about Insightin Health, which is another point too, using technology to make things more accessible, have the consumer participate in their well-being, in the choices that they make, providing the education and the access, giving the practitioners the ability to have better decision-making because of better data. So again, it's a very powerful use of technology to improve the quality of lives of people.
Yeah, and I think he even mentioned something about, like, interestingly, this was surprising to me, how maybe I heard this wrong, the healthcare industry is actually sort of data adverse, or at least with certain types of data. Did I pick that up incorrectly?
Which one, Kim?
Or maybe it has to do just with the privacy. Ignore me. I think I'm.
Well, there's challenges because of HIPAA and compliance and all that, right? There's challenges around that. But in some cases, those challenges become excuses, right? So it's like, at what point do you use that as an excuse to not innovate? And that happened a lot in the banking industry for many, many years. All of a sudden, all these compliance issues and all these regulations came about, and everybody stopped innovating, blaming the regulatory bodies, right? But eventually they realized, you got to work with what you have. You can still innovate.
Which is what we're seeing with the insurance agency too, right? A couple of our more recent Dojo.live shows is, really having to, like, innovate and hammer into these, like, dinosaur gigantic kind of dinosaur industries that have got to start.
And that's the conversation with Shira, right? Just because the idea of security hindering innovation, it's not true, right? You can incorporate these two elements and be very effective at building products. So you can still work with compliance, you can still maintain people's privacy, and use insights and data to enhance people's lives. So that's the trick, is finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely. Yeah, just one more thing. I became intrigued by the healthcare part, the consumerization of healthcare part, during this conversation with Michael, and because we've had, as you know, Tulio, we've had numerous AI-related conversations that fall into the tech space, and so how the way that these companies are gathering the data from the users, and how they're making sure that it gets, how can I say this from a layman's perspective? It's used right, used ethically, used appropriately to come up with, to optimize the outcomes of what of what we end up seeing in these platforms and tools. So yeah, it's exciting, and I'm sure there are going to be more because of health. Thanks.
What do we got coming up this week, Carlos?
Yeah, I appreciate your interrupting this time, Kim. I appreciate it.
Come on, we got 30 seconds. What do we got coming up?
We got Tulio. Tuesday, Michael Wood with no, wait a minute.
That was last week.
No. I had the wrong screen. Anyway,
Look, Adrian
McCarty with Unum ID, Tuesday. Dave Landa, Wednesday with Quintone, and Thursday, Anthony Molson with Project Phoenix. That's what we have right here on Dojo Live next week.
All right, we got 10 seconds left. Show us the view there in Cancun.
Well, the sun is bright, so there's a partial
beautiful
view.
Wow.
There you go. All right. See you back tomorrow at noon, everybody.
See you then. Thank you. Bye.